There's a stone in Lebanon that weighs 1,650 tons. Not 1,650 pounds, 1,650 tons. Over 3 million pounds. This is not speculation. This is measured. Documented by the German Archaeological Institute in 2014. The stone is called the Forgotten Stone of Baalbek. It sits in an ancient quarry, partially buried. 19.6 meters long, 6 meters wide, at least 5.5 meters high. Those are 64 feet by 20 feet by 18 feet for anyone counting. It was cut from solid bedrock, carved with precision, intended to be moved nearly a kilometer to a temple site, and then abandoned. Here's what makes this impossible. The largest mobile crane in the world today, the Liebherr LTM 11200-9.1, can lift approximately 1,200 tons, and only at very short radius under perfect conditions. That's with steel cables, hydraulic systems, computerized controls, and modern engineering. The Forgotten Stone weighs 1,650 tons. It exceeds the capability of our best modern equipment, yet someone cut it from bedrock over 2,000 years ago, using, according to official history, copper tools and manual labor. Let me show you the verified facts, the documented measurements, the official explanations, and the questions nobody can answer, starting with what's undeniable. Baalbek, Lebanon, ancient Roman city, formerly called Heliopolis, the city of the sun. The Temple of Jupiter stands on a platform made of the largest building blocks ever moved by humans. The foundation includes 3 stones called the trilithon. Each stone weighs between 750 and 800 tons. Each measures 19 meters long, 4.2 meters high, 3.6 meters thick. That's 62 feet long, 14 feet high, 12 feet thick. These measurements aren't estimates. Austrian geodetic teams confirmed them in 1996 using precision instruments. The 3 trilithon stones sit approximately 20 feet, 6 meters, above ground level, positioned with machine-like precision, fitted so tightly that you cannot slide paper between them. They rest on a supporting layer of stones that weigh approximately 350 tons each. Think about that. The supporting layer alone uses stones heavier than anything the Romans are documented to have moved anywhere else in their empire. All of this is documented, photographed, measured, verifiable. You can go there yourself and see it. In the quarry, 800 meters away from the temple, that's half a mile, archaeologists found 3 even larger stones that never made it to the construction site. The stone of the pregnant woman weighs approximately 1,000 tons. 20.76 meters long, 4 meters wide, 4.32 meters high. The stone of the south weighs approximately 1,240 tons, discovered in the 1990s. The Forgotten Stone weighs approximately 1,650 tons, discovered in 2014, still partially buried. All 3 were fully cut from bedrock, ready for transport. The German Archaeological Institute noted that the level of smoothness indicates the block was meant to be transported and used without being cut. They were finished, prepared, and then left behind. These are the facts, measured, documented, not debatable. Now let me show you what the official explanation says. According to mainstream archaeology, the Romans built these structures between roughly 27 BC and the 3rd century AD. Baalbek was a major Roman colony. Inscriptions confirm this. The visible temple architecture is clearly Roman. The method for moving these stones, manual labor, lots of it. The tools, copper and bronze, implements for cutting, wooden rollers for transport, hemp ropes, levers, inclined planes, basic mechanical advantage. French archaeologist Jean-Pierre Adam published theoretical calculations in 1977. He suggested that 512 workers using capstans and pulley systems could move a 557-ton block. For the 800-ton trilithon stones, his calculations suggested approximately 144 men working 6 machines could generate enough force, about 78,000 kilograms of traction, to move the blocks. This explanation is taught in universities, published in academic papers, accepted by mainstream archaeology, and it might be completely correct. But let me show you what modern engineers actually say about this. I'm not talking about ancient astronaut theorists or alternative historians. I'm talking about professional engineers who work with heavy lifting equipment today. Modern heavy lifting companies like Mamaway and Sarins can lift between 1,500 and 2,000 tons using specialized gantry systems. But these systems require steel framework weighing hundreds of tons itself, multiple synchronized hydraulic jacks, computer-controlled systems, months of planning and setup, perfectly level, reinforced ground, massive infrastructure investment. The Forgotten Stone weighs 1,650 tons. The trilithon stones weigh 800 tons each. Modern engineers look at this and say, we could do it today, but it would be one of the most complex heavy lift operations ever attempted. We'd need multiple cranes, custom equipment, extensive preparation, and it would cost millions of dollars. That's with steel, hydraulics, computers, and modern physics. The official explanation says ancient workers did this with wooden rollers, hemp ropes, and manual labor, moving the stones 800 meters uphill from the quarry to the temple site. Is this possible? Here's where the honest answer gets complicated. Theoretical physics says yes, it's possible, with enough workers and proper mechanical advantage. The calculations exist. The mathematics works out. But here's the problem. It has never been experimentally validated. Nobody has actually demonstrated that you can move an 800-ton stone using ancient methods. The calculations exist, the theories exist, but no practical demonstration. Compare this to other ancient engineering feats. Archaeologists have successfully demonstrated how Egyptians could have moved the 2.5-ton blocks for the pyramids. Experiments have been conducted, methods validated. We know it works because people have done it, but moving 800-ton blocks? No successful demonstration exists. The heaviest stones in the Great Pyramid of Giza weigh about 80 tons, 10 times lighter than the trilithon stones. The heaviest stones moved in documented Roman construction elsewhere weigh around 50 to 60 tons, more than 10 times lighter than the trilithon. So when mainstream archaeology says the Romans moved 800-ton blocks using manual labor, what evidence actually supports this claim? Theoretical physics calculations, that's it. No experimental validation, no documented Roman achievement of similar scale anywhere else in their empire. No contemporary Roman accounts describing the method. Just calculations suggesting it might be theoretically possible. Let me be very clear. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying nobody has proven it's possible by actually doing it at that scale. Now let's talk about the cutting tools. The official explanation says copper and bronze tools were used with abrasive sand to cut these massive stones. This explanation comes from experimental archaeology, researchers who actually test ancient techniques to see if they work, and they do work, for certain applications. Experiments conducted at the University of Pennsylvania and elsewhere have demonstrated that copper tools with quartz sand abrasive can successfully cut stone, including granite. The method works like this. A soft copper blade or drill is used with loose abrasive sand, usually quartz particles. The sand does the actual cutting, the copper just holds the abrasive in place. This technique has been validated. Ancient tool marks on Egyptian stonework match the patterns created by copper tools with abrasive. Partially completed ancient drilling projects show the characteristic spiral grooves left by copper tube drills. So yes, copper tools can cut stone. This isn't disputed. But there's a significant problem when you scale this up to Baalbek. First, let's understand copper's limitations. Copper has a Mohs hardness of 2.5 to 3. That's about the same hardness as limestone, which is what the Baalbek stones are made of. For cutting limestone, copper tools work reasonably well. Experimental archaeology shows cutting rates of about 15 times faster on limestone compared to granite. But even with limestone, the process is slow and the tools wear out quickly. Daniel Stocks, who conducted extensive replication experiments, documented that copper saws cutting limestone lost significant amounts of metal during use. Other experiments showed an inch of metal was lost from blades for every 1 to 4 inches of stone cut. This is confirmed by ancient Egyptian records. The Great Pyramid project consumed massive quantities of copper, not because copper was used for cladding or decoration, but because copper tools had to be constantly replaced as they wore down. For small objects, bowls, statues, decorative pieces, even for cutting 2.5-ton pyramid blocks. This is manageable. You have a supply of copper. You replace tools regularly, you continue working. But for the Baalbek stones, the scale becomes problematic. The Forgotten Stone alone measures 19.6 meters by 6 meters by 5.5 plus meters. That's over 600 cubic meters of stone in the block itself, not counting all the material that had to be removed around it to free it from the bedrock. Conservative estimates suggest at least 3,000 cubic meters of limestone had to be removed from the quarry floor to cut just this one stone free. How many copper tools would that require? How many workers? How many years? Nobody has calculated this because nobody has attempted to replicate it at scale. Small-scale experiments work, but nobody has demonstrated that you can actually cut a 1,650-ton block from bedrock using copper tools and sand. The official answer remains theoretically possible with enough time and resources, but unvalidated at scale. Which brings us to 5 questions nobody answers satisfactorily. Question 1. Why use stones this large? If you have the capability to move 800-ton blocks, you can move smaller blocks more easily. 10 80-ton blocks are functionally equivalent to one 800-ton block. But moving 10 80-ton blocks is vastly easier than moving one 800-ton block. The Romans built massive structures throughout their empire. The Colosseum, the Pantheon, aqueducts spanning hundreds of miles. None of these structures used blocks heavier than 60 tons. Why? Because there's no practical reason to use heavier blocks when smaller blocks work just as well. So why did whoever built Baalbek's foundation use 800-ton blocks? The official answer is prestige. To impress? To demonstrate engineering capability? Maybe. But that requires believing the Romans deliberately chose the most difficult construction method possible just to show off. Is that how engineering works? Or do engineers typically choose the most efficient method available? Question 2. Why were the quarry stones abandoned? The 3 massive stones in the quarry, 1,000 tons, 1,240 tons, 1,650 tons, were fully cut, ready for transport. The German Archaeological Institute noted their smoothness indicates they were finished, so why abandon them? The official explanation: the stones proved too difficult to move. Workers realized they were too heavy and gave up. But if that's true, why cut them in the first place? Wouldn't you test the feasibility of moving such weights before investing the enormous labor required to cut them? And if the Romans realized these stones were too heavy, why are there already 3 800-ton stones in place at the temple foundation? If they could move 3 800-ton stones successfully, why couldn't they move 3 more stones that were only slightly heavier? The standard answer doesn't make logical sense. Question 3. Where are the tool marks? Ancient quarries typically show extensive tool marks. Chisel marks, saw marks, drill holes. Evidence of the cutting process is usually obvious. The Baalbek stones show smooth, precise cuts. Some researchers claim they see tool marks consistent with copper implements. Others point to the smoothness and precision as evidence of something more advanced. Without extensive published analysis, we don't have a definitive answer, but the question remains. Question 4. Why no contemporary accounts? The Romans documented everything. They left detailed accounts of bridge construction, aqueduct engineering, military campaigns, administrative procedures. But descriptions of how they moved 800-ton stones? Nothing. Pliny the Elder mentioned the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek, but said nothing about construction methods. No Roman engineer described the techniques used. No contemporary account explains how these massive stones were quarried, transported, or lifted. Is this simply an accident of history? Records lost over time? Or does it suggest the Romans didn't actually build the massive foundation, only the temple on top of it? Question 5. What about the foundation style? Look at photographs of Baalbek. The massive lower foundation stones look completely different from the Roman temple construction above them. The megalithic foundation uses huge blocks with tight precision and minimal decoration. The Roman temple uses smaller blocks with typical Roman construction and elaborate columns and ornamentation. Many researchers argue these represent 2 different construction periods. The Romans built their temple on top of a pre-existing megalithic platform. The counterargument says the foundation is Roman, just a different construction phase using different techniques for different purposes. No consensus exists. But the visual difference is striking. Now let me present 3 interpretations of all this evidence. I'm not claiming to know which is true. I'm showing you what different researchers believe and why. Theory 1, the official explanation: Romans built everything. The Romans quarried and moved these stones using manual labor, wooden rollers, ropes, levers, and mechanical advantage. They used copper tools with abrasive sand to cut the stones. The timeline spans 27 BC to the 3rd century AD. Several generations of workers, massive labor force, enormous commitment of resources. The abandoned quarry stones represent a miscalculation. Workers realized they were too heavy and stopped the project. The evidence supporting this: Baalbek was definitely a major Roman colony. Inscriptions confirm Roman presence. Theoretical physics calculations show it's possible. This explanation is taught in universities and accepted by mainstream archaeology, and it might be entirely correct. The mathematics work, the physics are sound, we just haven't experimentally validated it at this scale. And Theory 2, pre-Roman megalithic construction. The massive foundation was built by an earlier civilization, Phoenicians or even older cultures dating back thousands of years. The Romans later built their temple on top of this pre-existing platform without fully understanding how it was originally constructed. This would explain several things. Why no Roman accounts describe moving 800-ton stones? Why the foundation style differs dramatically from Roman construction? Why the largest Roman structures elsewhere use much smaller blocks? The evidence? Stylistic differences between foundation and temple? Absence of contemporary Roman accounts? Serious questions about practical feasibility. Many independent researchers support this theory. Mainstream archaeology rejects it, arguing the entire structure is Roman. Theory 3. Lost technology or knowledge. Some researchers propose that ancient builders possessed engineering knowledge or technology that has been lost to history. This doesn't necessarily mean ancient aliens or supernatural explanations. It could mean several things. Maybe ancient engineers understood leverage and pulley systems in ways we've forgotten. Maybe they had sophisticated counterweight systems. Maybe they built advanced wooden machinery that simply decomposed over time, leaving no trace. Maybe engineering principles were lost when civilizations collapsed and knowledge wasn't passed down. We know this happens. The Romans had concrete that lasted millennia. The recipe was lost for over 1,000 years. We only recently figured out how they made it. Could something similar have happened with megalithic construction techniques? Then there's the more controversial stone softening theory. Some researchers suggest ancient builders knew how to temporarily soften stone using natural compounds or techniques. They point to extremely smooth cuts, surfaces that appear molded rather than carved, and legends in various cultures about stone softening techniques. Let me be completely honest. This is speculation. No scientific evidence supports stone softening. No modern replication has succeeded. No ancient texts explicitly describe such techniques. The mainstream archaeological community rejects this as pseudoscience. There's also the acoustic theory, that sound frequencies, or vibrations, were used to move massive stones. While it's true that vibrations can reduce friction, and modern engineering does use this principle, there's no evidence or successful demonstration of this for ancient construction. Finally, there's the possibility that engineering knowledge came from earlier, now forgotten civilizations. The precision of the cuts, the absence of experimental validation for moving stones this size, the global pattern of similar megalithic construction at sites worldwide. This theory is the most speculative, but the engineering mysteries remain unexplained by current mainstream theories. I can't tell you which theory is correct. Theory 1 has the support of mainstream archaeology, but lacks experimental validation at the claimed scale. Theory 2 raises valid questions, but contradicts academic consensus. Theory 3 is highly speculative, but addresses mysteries. The other theories struggle to explain. What I can tell you is this. The stones exist. 1,650 tons. Verified. They were cut with precision. Documented. Nobody has successfully demonstrated how to move them using ancient methods. That's a fact. Modern equipment can barely handle stones this size, even with all our technology. Also a fact. Here's what bothers me most about this mystery. It's not just Baalbek. Around the world, ancient sites feature a similar megalithic construction that raises the same questions. Sacsayhuaman in Peru has massive stones weighing up to 200 tons, fitted with precision, no mortar. Official explanation: Inca engineering. But how exactly? Nobody has replicated it. Ollantaytambo in Peru has stones weighing 50 to 100 plus tons, transported from quarries miles away, lifted to temple platforms. Official explanation: manual labor and ingenuity. But demonstrated how? Where's the experimental validation? Pumapunku in Bolivia has precision-cut stones with complex angles and surfaces. Official explanation: bronze tools and stone hammers. But validated through experiment at that scale? Easter Island has Moai statues weighing up to 82 tons, transported miles across the island. Theories exist. Partial demonstrations have been conducted. But full-scale validation of the complete process? The pattern is global. Advanced megalithic construction, precision engineering, massive weights, often minimal tool marks, and always the same explanation. Lots of workers and simple tools. Maybe that's sufficient. Maybe human determination and basic physics can accomplish extraordinary things. But nobody has proven it by actually doing it at the claimed scale. And here's where the timeline gets interesting, and where we need to talk about something that appears on old maps, but vanished from history. These megalithic sites exist worldwide. Different continents, different cultures, different time periods according to official chronology. Yet they share remarkable similarities: massive, precisely cut stones, minimal tool marks, methods we cannot experimentally replicate, transportation questions we can't answer, precision that rivals modern capabilities. Is this coincidence, independent development, or evidence of shared knowledge from a common source? Let me show you something verifiable, then tell you where it becomes speculation. Go to any major library or archive. Look at historical maps from the 1600s through the early 1800s. You'll find a vast territory labeled Tartaria, or Tartary, spanning much of Asia. Maps from 1705, 1749, 1754, 1816 all show Tartaria, depicted as a major civilization, with cities, borders, territorial divisions, described in geographical texts and encyclopedias of the time. This isn't disputed. These maps exist. You can verify this yourself. Then, between 1850 and 1900, Tartaria disappears from maps completely. The territory is relabeled. The name vanishes from encyclopedias. The civilization, whatever it was, is erased from official history. The standard explanation says Tartaria was just a catch-all term Europeans used for unknown regions. not an actual unified civilization, just a label for places they didn't understand. Maybe that's true. But here's the question that connects to Baalbek and other megalithic sites. What if Tartaria, or whatever civilization actually existed in those territories, possessed advanced engineering knowledge? What if the megalithic construction techniques we see worldwide came from this civilization or its predecessors? What if, when Tartaria was erased from maps and history, the knowledge of how to move 1,650-ton stones was erased with it? Now, let me be very clear about what I can prove and what I can't. I can prove that maps from the 1600s to 1800s show Tartaria. That's documented historical fact. I can prove that Tartaria disappears from maps between 1850 and 1900, also documented. I can prove that megalithic sites worldwide show engineering capabilities we cannot experimentally replicate. We've covered that throughout this script. I can prove that no successful demonstration exists of moving 800-ton stones using ancient methods. That's true. Here's what I cannot prove. That Tartaria possessed advanced engineering knowledge. That's speculation. That megalithic construction worldwide came from this civilization. That's speculation. That knowledge was deliberately erased from history. That's speculation. Can I prove the connection between Tartaria and megalithic engineering? No. Does mainstream archaeology accept this theory? Absolutely not. Do the engineering mysteries remain unexplained? Yes. Here's the pattern that makes people question the official story. Megalithic sites exist worldwide that we cannot replicate using the claimed methods. Historical maps show a major civilization that later vanishes completely from the record. The timeline is striking. Tartaria disappears from maps during the same 1850 to 1900 period when other historical anomalies occur. Old buildings across America getting buried or demolished, streets being raised covering original ground floors, massive neoclassical buildings appearing with impractical 125-foot ceiling heights, world's fairs showcasing temporary buildings with seemingly advanced architecture. Is this evidence of connected civilizations sharing advanced technology? Or is it coincidence, independent development, and we simply don't fully understand ancient engineering yet? I cannot prove the Tartaria connection, but I can show you that the questions exist. The stones are real. The engineering mysteries are real. The historical anomalies are real. Whether they're connected? That's speculation based on observable facts that don't have satisfying mainstream explanations. Let me end with this. You can visit Baalbek yourself. The stones are there. You can see them. You can measure them. You can see the precision, the massive scale. The question's literally carved into bedrock. Ask yourself, could you move a 1,650-ton stone using wooden rollers and rope? Could you cut it with copper tools and sand? Could modern engineers do it easily? The official answer is yes, theoretically, with enough workers and mechanical advantage. Maybe that's true. Or maybe there's something about ancient engineering capabilities we don't understand. Maybe there's knowledge that's been lost, technology that's been forgotten, understanding that's disappeared from the historical record. I'm not claiming to know. Or I'm showing you the evidence, the measurements, the mysteries, the questions nobody can fully answer, and asking you to think about what's more likely: that ancient workers with copper tools accomplished engineering feats modern equipment struggles to replicate, or that we're missing something important about human history and capabilities. The stones are real, the precision is real, the weight is real. The explanation, that's for you to decide.